I won't even get into details, but I almost felt like they did me a favor by letting me go.
Look,
And
I
then,
said it. I said it. Don't ever challenge Farah. She will prove you wrong.
but let's take it back to God and faith for a moment. I
Okay.
truly believe that sometimes some doors close because you're being redirected to your purpose. And I truly believe, and I joke about it. I'm like, I think God is trying to push me more into entrepreneurship and telling me, hey, you have something bigger to share, a bigger impact, and you need to do it in a different way. And the third time that it happened, I actually started laughing and I just
Hmm.
couldn't believe it. And I said, whoa, okay. And I said, all right, so what's next?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Chatting with the Experts show, where I speak with fabulous women from Africa, from the Caribbean, and in the diaspora. Today, our topic is why nurses are moving towards business. And my guest, who will join me in a second, says, because you're a nurse, it doesn't mean that you have to stay at the bedside forever. And so, with that, welcome Farah Laurent to Chatting with the Experts.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Can't wait to dive into this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, you said because you're a nurse or someone is trained as a nurse, doesn't mean you have to stay at the bedside forever. And you're saying that there are lots of options beside the bedside. Let's talk about that.
Yes, yes, yes. So, traditionally, I think nursing, not even just within the US or Canada, because I started my career in Canada, I think globally, the perception of nurses, when you see nurses, typically in the media or just the perception of nurses, is they typically work in the hospitals, right? And this is what I want nurses to know. And people that want to get into nursing, there's much more to nursing than just bedside nursing, right? So that's, part of my journey is what led me to want to educate the public and also educate future nurses about their opportunities in nursing. So when I started in Canada, I had a clinical instructor, you know, very traditional, old school. And when she asked me, Farah, what type of nurse do you want to be? And I said, I want to be an emergency nurse because I love all the stuff, the action. And she literally laughed in my face and
Oh,
was,
no.
yeah. And she said, Farah, you're too unorganized. You'll never be an emergency nurse. You should go to medical surgical, which is typically where they tell new nurses to go. So in my head, for a moment, I was like, wow, like, how could she say that? Like, she's trying to crush my dream. So, of course, I didn't listen to that. And in my head, I was like, wow, okay, watch me, lady. I will become an emergency nurse. And that was always my tenacity in my spirit. I'm like, you can't tell me what I can and can't do, even as a student. And that's where it all started. So not only did I secure an emergency position, I got two offers as a nursing student before I even passed my boards, my licensing boards in Canada. And then I started working in the ER 2 days after graduation when
Wow.
all my friends were still just looking and applying. I was already working in the ER. And this has kind of been the journey and why I promised myself I would later become an educator and be a cool, fun educator to educate the next generation and inspire them. Yeah.
I love that. The cool, fun educator. Ooh, those three words, cool, fun, or two words. Sometimes people don't associate that with nursing, but you are obviously the outlier. You're showing them and letting people know it can be done.
Yes, yes, yes. And, when I went into the ER, I worked in Canada for 5 years, left Canada and moved to New York City. I was like, I want to go to a big city. So went to New York City. That was probably one of the best decisions I ever made because it took me out of my comfort zone. It made me grow in different ways and it really opened up my eyes to the opportunities, not only just in nursing, but beyond, and that's when my mind started looking at different options. Yeah.
All right. So, listening to you and having talked with you off camera, I know you're very much into nurse entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
What is that, and why should people consider it?
Yeah. So, going along in my career, I always did what was expected, right? Go to school, get the next degree. I thought I would be in the ER for, I stayed in the ER for 13 years. Then I wanted to go into education. So I got the next degree, education degree. It took me quite some time after I graduated from my master's to get into education because there was a lot of politics. It was very difficult navigating the job search, even though I was extremely qualified on paper. I realized quickly, if you didn't play the game, if they didn't really take a liking to you, it was very hard for you to get promoted.
Mm.
So, I moved around, finally got the opportunity to be an educator, moved along the ranks to become a leader in education. So I became a nurse educator. Then I worked for NYU as a clinical instructor, which I loved nursing students. Then fast forward, became the director of education. And that was my dream job. And that's
Mm.
when I realized, wow, there's a lot of challenges the higher up you go in leadership. And the impact you want to make is not as easy as it seems. So there is a lot of roadblocks from an advocacy point. When I would try to advocate, I was met with a lot of resistance. And I'm someone who loves to talk in the C-suites. I would be the one, hey, I have an idea. I don't think we should do this. This is not safe. So I felt like my advocacy didn't make me that popular, right? A lot of times I had to stand alone and stand firm. And that eventually actually led to me getting laid off 3 times in 5 years.
Oh no.
So it's almost like entrepreneurship. I was pushed into entrepreneurship. So you asked the question, what is entrepreneurship? So to me, it's innovation and it's constantly looking at the job market to see what is the gap, what is the problem that really fires you up to say, hey, I have a solution and I can bring this forth and create something out of nothing. And that to me is entrepreneurship, is really being business savvy. So what I saw is I always mentored new nurses and they kept coming to me for interview help and coming to me for the same issues that I had as a new nurse. So I was mentoring them, obviously for free. And then I said, well, I could actually turn this into a business model. And that's where I started with the nurse career coach. I didn't have that 20 years ago. No one heard of a nurse career coach. And that's what I started doing was taking these nurses, helping them land six-figure roles right out of school, getting into specialty areas that they keep being told that they can't get into by
Mm.
recruiters. Almost like helping my younger self, help pave the way for them and facilitating this for them. Yeah, but it was a lot of learning along the way.
Ooh, yeah, talking about a lot of learning because you are actually Dr. Farah Laurent,
Mhm.
not just Farah. So you didn't stop at getting your master's, you went on to get your doctorate.
Yes, yes. And it's funny because everyone thought I was crazy. I was in school for my doctorate, working full time as a director. My daughter had just turned a few months old, and my son was 4. And as I was seeing these challenges in the workplace, I thought, wow, I got all these degrees, I got all these certifications, I'm doing the right things, but there's no job security, right? As you climb up the ladder. So that's when I said, I don't want to have to depend on one employer anymore and let it like be uncertain. So let me build something of my own. So I started creating content to help these new nurses. I started building my brand, right? My personal brand. And then I started really diving into business skills so that I could learn the fundamentals of how do you grow a business, even down to the terminology, because it's very different, obviously, than the nursing industry. And that's when I was obsessed,
Hmm. Say obsessed.
obsessed with business because people, traditionally, They're like, oh, you have young kids, like, I don't know, you're going to school and you're trying to start a business. But as you know, right, when you have kids, I feel like you have a different drive that really kicks in. And to me, I was just tired of being told what to do. Didn't want to work for anybody anymore.
So a trend here. Don't tell Farah what to do. Tell her if you want to get her started, tell her not to do it. And she'll show you that she can.
Yes, yes, I think that's a big drive. And I find a lot of critical care nurses, like ICU nurses and emergency nurses, all nurses, but for some reason, those two type of nurses, because we're very adaptable, we deal with life or death, so we're really
Yes.
comfortable under pressure. So I think these types of nurses do really well in business because we're so adaptable. And if you think about all the nursing skills, people skills, problem solving, they're all transferable to business. And this is why I think so many nurses are now just taking their skills and transferring it over to starting their own businesses.
I love that. Taking what you are being trained for and then applying it because business really is about seeing a problem and
Yep.
solving it.
Yep.
Problem solving, looking to see, okay, what is it that the people need and giving it to them. And you saw that through nursing. As you mentioned earlier on, you had a lot of young nurses or student nurses coming to you and asking you like how to go about, certain things, passing the exams or
Hmm.
whatever it might have been. And you saw a business opportunity there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, a lot of nurses are also doing, different options in business are consulting
Mhm.
and coaching because those are easy businesses to start because they're service-based business. There's not a
Mhm.
lot of overhead to start. A lot of nurses or just people in general have misconceptions about business. They think that you need a massive amount of money to start a business, but that's not necessarily true. Literally, it could just take a couple $100s for you to register your business, right? And then also from the clinical side, a lot of nurse practitioners are starting their own private practices, telehealth practices, which is helping with primary care, which is, a big issue in the US. And then they're also going the aesthetic route. There's a lot of med spas, a lot of these IV hydration businesses, which is very a little bit more complex because some states require you to have a physician and so there's a lot of legal aspects to business as well if you do want to start a business. But for me, I think the easiest way is to do consulting, coaching, or some type of education where you could just provide already what you know, your intellectual property. And then also speaking. A lot of nurses are getting speaking engagements where they're getting paid. So, yeah, there's a lot of options out there.
Oh, great, because I was just about to ask you how to go about that. So thanks for answering that
Yeah, yeah.
question. The importance of having business acumen and investing in personal development.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely necessary. When you first start in business, you might have a business idea and you keep thinking it over. Like, I'll give you an example. So, the third time I got laid off was I was an associate dean of a nursing program, and it was
Ooh,
kind of unexpected. I was only in the role for a few months. I won't even get into details, but I almost felt like they did me a favor by letting me go.
look,
And
I
then
said it. I said it. Don't ever challenge Farah. She will prove you wrong.
But, let's take it back to God and faith for a moment. I
Amen.
truly believe that sometimes some doors close because you're being redirected to your purpose. And I
Amen.
truly believe, and I joke about it, I'm like, I think God is trying to push me more into entrepreneurship and telling me, hey, you have something bigger to share, a bigger impact, and you need to do it in a different way. And the third time that it happened, I actually started laughing and I just
Hmm.
couldn't believe it. And I said, whoa, okay. And I said, all right, so what's next? Because that's the type of mentality that nurses have, specifically as an ER nurse. We have to just keep it moving and do what's next. So When I got laid off and we were moving actually to Tampa, Florida, I knew no one in Tampa, Florida. And I said, well, what can I do? So I continued my coaching, but I said, I've always wanted to do an event for nurses. So many nurses have been coming to me asking me, hey, how did you start your business? How did you become a nurse career coach? Do you have to get certified? Did you have to go to business school? So I wrote a book called Nurses Making Money Moves in 2023.
Let me write that down and we drop that in the show notes.
Oh, yeah,
Nurse.
I have it right here.
Ooh,
This is the
ooh,
book.
that's so,
And I self-published because I looked at publishing options. It was too long, too costly. So I just did it myself. And I did it literally in a couple weeks and had it published for a conference I was speaking at. So based off that book, I always said I wanted to do a conference. People kept saying, you can't do it. It's going to take a year. Like, you can't just pull it off on your own. So then in December of 2024, something just kept nagging. And it was like, do it. It was like, I just couldn't fall asleep. And then I was like, okay, literally within 2 weeks, I called a couple people and I was like, what do you think? They're like, yeah. They're like, that's a good idea. And then there was one lady who was in business for a long time. I was excited to talk to her. And she said, yeah, if I were you, I wouldn't do it. She said, you need a year. It's the holidays, it's Christmas, New Year's is around the corner. No one's gonna come. But she's like, you know what? I don't your parade. Go ahead if you think it's gonna work. But if I were you, I wouldn't do it. So I hung up the phone. I was like, cool, I'm doing it.
what did I say? Don't tell Farah she can't do it. And you did.
So literally within 2 weeks, I had the venue booked, all the speakers booked, and started selling tickets. And it was called Nurses Making Money Moves Conference. And it happened in March. Literally in less than 3 months, I planned the conference, had 20 different states represented, and about 80 nurses and other entrepreneurs showed up. And that's how that was born, right? From your question, I hope I answered it, but that was the example because a lot of times we want to start businesses that we want to start. But before you start it, you have to do some market research and
Yes.
ask some questions and see who the viable potential clients are before you go and invest all this money to do the business. Somebody that I love to
Absolutely.
follow is Daniel Priestley. I don't know if you've heard of him,
Mhm.
but he's a serial entrepreneur. He's based out of the UK, but he talks about something about creating wait lists. And he talks about the concept of being oversubscribed. So he says, he's built his multiple businesses to like millions and millions. And he also coaches other millionaires. And he says, before you start a business, put out a waiting list to see if the people want that type of whatever business you're launching. And if you get at least 150 people who sign up for your wait list, then that gives you an indication and a signal that, hey, people are interested. Go ahead and, write the book or do the launch or whatever. And I think that's a great idea because, you have to have some type of data before you go on and create something nobody wants.
I love that. Put out that waiting list because and see if people are interested. I think that's market research 101, business 101.
Yes,
Don't
yes,
put
yes.
all your eggs and just because you love it doesn't mean it's a problem that is out there that people want solved. You may think it's
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
And and I'm sure that's what you teach when you coach.
Yeah, and the other bit of it is because I do mentor some aspiring nurse entrepreneurs. Of course, the conference again is happening in March, March 6th and 7th. Nurses Making Business Moves. I changed the name. Some people were upset, but I changed it just because I thought maybe for sponsorships, people might understand it a little better. Nurses Making Business Moves so that they understand that it's educational, you know, giving nurses entrepreneurial skills and mindset, whether it's in their career or starting a business. But nurses need to understand too that you can have a business idea, it could be great, but if no one knows about it, no one's going to purchase. So this is why platforms like yours having a podcast, building a personal brand, speaking on stages, going to conferences, you have to be visible and you have to
Yes.
create a personal brand so that people can know you. And the foundation of all that is to create trust so that
Yes.
people can get to know you and see, hey, yes, I like, this person's values and I want to support or I want to be a part of what they're creating or building. Yeah.
Because that like and trust factor is a big part of business success. People have to, even if they don't know you, they have to like you. And then when they like you, then they follow you and they get to know you. But there has to be trust. And that brings me to my final question about community. I
Mm-hmm.
know that, you know, when one has a business and one has a business like yours, where you are coaching and budding nurses to go into business, to become self-employed,
Yeah.
it helps if they sometimes are in a group setting.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you encourage them to, find a community that will help them grow?
Yeah, so definitely, I'm always a big advocate of finding mentors and not just having one mentor. I believe people should have multiple mentors. And if you are a nurse, I think you should have mentors outside of nursing, right? So
Like that.
a couple people have described multiple mentors, right? But you should have someone in all aspects of your life. Like you should probably have a mentor that's more like a relationship or, type of mentor that kind of guides you. And then also financial, somebody who's really good with finances, and then, obviously from the clinical standpoint, that can help guide you along your career. And that's where I come in. I'm a mentor and also a nurse career coach that helps nurses to make the right career path decisions so that they don't waste time and think, oh, I have to wait before I can do this. No, you don't have to wait. You could just jump right in and do what you want. Life is so short. Why would you want to wait forever? So, mentorship is important and investing in coaching is important, like I mentioned. Whether you want to start a business or you want to grow in your career, not only do you have to do personal development and nursing, like skill wise, we do CPR, we do this and this, but we also need career development and that other type of growth. And that's how I've grown as a nurse and as a business leader and also being in community. A lot of times when we start businesses, we do it on our own.
Yes.
But once we start getting into business masterminds, getting coaches, and this is why I built the community nurses making business
Business.
moves.
Love it.
Um,
Love it.
on
Love it.
social, yeah, on social media, I create a lot of content. Eventually, I'll do a proper community, but that's what it is right now.
And on that note, for those who are listening to this or viewing this after the live stream, how can people get in touch with you, Farah?
Yeah, so the best way to contact me, I would say, is through LinkedIn. That's where I'm always very active. So you could just send me a direct message, or you can also go to nursefarah.com. There's a section there where you can actually book a call if you wanted to book a call with me. And if you're a new nurse, I also do a weekly webinar. It's a free webinar, and you can subscribe to see when the next webinar happens. Go to newnursejob.com where you can sign up and join me in my free webinars. And of course, nursesmakingbusinessmoves.com. You can come meet me in person at the conference if you're able to, March 6th and 7th in Tampa, Florida.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. And for those of you who just heard that she's having this event in March 6th and 7th, I also want you to know that she's going to be on my summit, which runs from March 9th through the 14th. She's going to be one of our speakers. And this summit is a virtual summit, and it's primarily for women. So it's for you if you're a woman and you want to step into leadership without shrinking back, as you've heard Farah talk. If you want to increase your income without burnout, it's also for you if you want to build bold visibility and speak with authority, just like Farah did. And last but not least, be in a community with other powerful professional and even non-professional women, because we have entrepreneurs in the community as well. If this is you, make sure that you join us for the virtual summit called Empower to Excel, a virtual summit for women entrepreneurs and professionals, and it runs from the 9th of March through the 14th of March. I will drop that link in the chat. Thank you so much, Farah, for being a guest on
Thank
Chatting with
you.
the Experts. And now let's open up the floor to those who have joined us in the live audience and want to have a chance to speak with you. I won't be selfish. I'll share you with them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited about your event. Thank you again.
I'm blessed to have you. And everyone who has joined us today, thank you for joining.
Thank you.